Okay. Where do we start? The line begins Zelozeh. How was that? Bottom third of the page. Zelozeh. So he says, "Maharisha ho'ir be'etzem einoi be'erech ho'oilomis." That's what we finished learning last time. Because oir be'etzem is me'ein hamoir. And moir is poshut. Why is moir poshut? Moir is poshut betachas apshitus. And oir, oblique vul, and oir is me'ein hamoir, and therefore the oir is not lefiarach ha'elamus. Not fiarach. Oir me'ein hamoir.
The or is berech tomorrow, right?
It's me'ein hamoir. It represents the moir. It's not me'ein hamoir in terms of being a moir, but in terms of oir, the oir that it represents is the oir that reflects the moir. The meaning of the word poshut betachlis, I will say that therefore the oil is which is me'ein hamoyer, therefore it is blik vul and amlai be'erech ha'elamas. The union of oir and moir is that the oir comes from the moir without any effort on the part of the moir. If the moir would be creating oir by defining it, what the moir wants to create, then the oir would not be me'ein hamoir and would not be beposhut, because he is defined what is being given. Like if you give us a seichel, no matter how deep the seichel is, it's not poshut, because it is predetermined, it is contemplated. Is defined what is being given. But oir comes from the moir b'derech mamela. What does b'derech mamela mean? That it is completely reflective of what moir is, and therefore, by the very presence of the moir, there is the oir. Just like the sun and the light. The light comes from the sun not because the sun is projecting the light, but because the sun is present. The sun is present, so there is the oil coming from the sun. There's the oil of the sun. The sun is preoccupied in the sense of being a sun, not oir, not moir. And the oir is reflecting what sun is. So since the sun, since the moir is not focused on creating oir, oir comes with derech mamela. There are two aspects that are automatically included in this. One is that the moir, in terms of how much oil the moir has, is infinite. Because if it were finite, it would have to be given in a specific manner, in a focused manner. The moir itself, so to speak, has this oil in an infinite manner. Having the oil in an infinite manner means that the oil by the moir itself is not defined. It is there b'pshitus. It is there automatically. It is there by the moir automatically, and therefore it flows out of the moir automatically. Then, when you have these qualities, the criterion, then you can call it oir and moir. What are the qualities that come along with pshitus and bligvul?
So we have two pieces on big wool, how it's in the ore and how it's in the ore, or it's the same?
You asked before whether the oil is be'erach the moir. The oil is be'erach the moir in terms of being oir, the oil of the moir, but it's not moir. The moir is, in terms of being moir, it's shaloi be'erach. The moir reflects oil automatically. That means that the oil by the moir is bligvul. The moir is the source of the oir. The moir itself is not oir. The moir is something else completely. And it deflects oir with derech mamela. And what is the oir? There is reflect what moir is. I just want to bring to the point to understand how this is shaloi be'erach ha'olamus. We have the terminology because it's poshut and it's bligvul, but I want to, so to speak, bring home what does that mean in terms of the olamus. What is shaloi be'erach ha'olamus? What's the relationship? Olamus, we say balei gvul, but it has to be balei gvul, and this is bli gvul, and therefore it shall be ever. What is the meaning at olamus gvul, balei gvul, and oil is bli gvul, and therefore what's the significance of these words that olamus are gvul? The meaning of gvul relative to olamus is that oilamos, by definition, are of such a madrega that it is something that comes into being. Comes into being means that it could be not in being, it could not be, and it could be. Anything that does not have these two possibilities is not oilam. If it can only be and not be, then it's not oilam. This Alter Rebbe says, over heve v'yiyeh, over heve v'osit. There has to be its presence is represented by the fact that it comes into being. To illustrate this in our simple terms. As opposed to a muscle, just to get the idea. Okay? In this room, we have tables, chairs, and we have floor and a ceiling. The floor and the ceiling is part of the room. Without a floor and a ceiling, there's no room. The tables and chairs, they are put into the room. So when you enter the room, what do you notice? The tables and chairs. Why don't you notice the floor and ceiling? Because the floor and ceiling is part of the definition of the room itself. It's not something that comes into being into the room. It's not an add-on to the room. It's taken for granted. Therefore, you don't notice it. You don't even notice the walls. But the furniture, which was brought into the room, that you notice. In other words, what is the presence of the furniture consists in the fact that it was brought into the room. It came into being. This is the definition of oilamos. Its presence is defined by the fact that it came into being. This is the meaning of world. Because anything that didn't come into being is not called world. It's a primary truth. Therefore, something that is poshut and bligvul, like oil. Oil is a kind of a paradox. What's a paradox? You know what a paradox is? The paradox of oil is, on the one hand, it came into being because there's the moir prior to the oil. So the oil came into being. Therefore, you could say, oh, that's a worldly quality. But on the other hand, how did it come into being? It did not come into being as an addition, as something has been created. Something that is an add-on to the moir. It came into being by reflecting the moir. So it's true. The moir can conceal itself and can reveal itself. But it's only concealing itself and revealing itself. It's not creating oil. Therefore, the oil itself, the etzem oil, as reflecting the moir, is reflecting an entity, reflecting a quality that is not world, that does not come into being. Even though the oil itself does come into being. This is the paradox of oil. This is why we say that oil, in order to come into world, has to come into keli. Oil, the difference between oil and moir is precisely in this. But even though oil is reflecting the moir completely, it's poshut, it's bligvul, there's one difference. Oil can be put into keli. Moir cannot be put in the keli.
In the keli is like sun shine through the green glass, or like water put in the cup.
Anything that makes you able to notice and to recognize something that is poshut is called a keli. A keli is a means by which you were able to get hold of something that on its own you can't get hold of it. Put into a cup, it's the same thing. You can't get hold of water without a cup. There are different levels, of course, but you understand the concept. The same thing is a seichel. You can't get hold of a seichel without words, without some kind of form.
So any tool which is able to reveal the light is called a keli.
It's not a keli. So this is the this is what happens, and this is the effect of oir versus moir. Oir is me'en ha-moir, but it can be put into a keli. Being put in the keli means that it can be nistamtzen. You can limit the amount that is being reflected, and that's why oil can ultimately be brought down into the level of worlds. Moir is an etzem bligvul, cannot become a world. Okay, but and I wanted we should understand that the principle, how poshut, pshitus, and bligvul and world are totally different aspects, different concepts.
So the world is not light, it's like something different category. But the world is like keli, it's
We have light in the world. We have sunlight. And it illuminates the entire world. And the reason that sunlight is able to illuminate the entire world is that it comes from the sun and it comes into the world. If this light, like we discussed many times, if this light did not have the sense, would not have the message that it's coming from someplace, but it would be just light present here, then it would not illuminate the world. I can point out all the time that the reason we are able to see this cup as a result of light is because the light comes from one direction, so we have the lit part and the shaded part. We have the light combining with darkness. This is why we're able to see. It was exclusively light, then we would be able to see anything. The light would not be part of the world.
So we see in our world, we see the light not like he is in the etzem.
That's right.
So we have a etzem of the light and what?
That's right.
And how they call the second part? Etzem and not light.
Yeah, that's some chitzonius of light. Chitzonius of light. Oir lehoyer, which is not etzem oir. And if we lost the sensation that this light is coming here, then it would be no light. It would not serve as light in this world, on the worldly level. Light in the world means that there is darkness and there is light that illuminates it. If you eliminate darkness completely, there's no light. It's not a worldly light. There is light, but it's not a worldly light. Okay, so this is what the Rebbe explains over here. Oir be'etzem eine be'erech ha'olemus. Then can move on, and thus it's understood. The ma shehakelim megalim oir b'ha'olemus, that the fact that the kelim reveal oir in olemus. This is the point, the conclusion of the whole of the discussion, because we said before that Havaya and Alikim oir v'keli, and oir v'keli. We said are opposites, but then we asked, "But kelim are megala de oir." So he went in the whole discussion to explain the principle, and coming to the conclusion that kelim are megala de oir. In oilam is ein ze bechinas etzem ha'oir. It's not that they are megala de etzem ha'oir. Because if they were to be megal etzem oir, they would not be oir in elamus. Ki im bechinas haorach hitzenis levad mimeno. It is what the kelim megala is only an external haorah of the oir. Avol letzem ha'oir, hu b'bchinas helem bohem. But the etzem of the oir becomes concealed within the kelim. Shehei ma'alim imolov. Because the kelim, how does it become behelem? The kelim conceal the etzem ha'oir. We will discuss this in a moment. By the very fact that the kelim conceal on the etzem of the oir, this is how they are able to be megala, to reveal the chitzonis of the oir. That it should be able to illuminate and have effect in the world. Like you said, they have a green light, a green glass, and the light goes through this glass, and you see green. You see a green light. What happens to the rest of the light? The rest of the light gets concealed, blocked off by this glass. because it blocks off the rest of the light, this is how you see it filters out everything else, and you see just this aspect of the light. If it did not filter out the rest of the light, blocking the light, like say a glass blocking a light, literally means the same as this blocking a light. You can't see through it. The glass also blocks light, except it doesn't block the whole light. It blocks the etzem of the light and leaves through a very minimal, limited amount of the light that is able to be expressed as green light or red light. What is the difference between chitzonius ha'or and etzem ha'or? This again goes back to our discussion. Chitzonius ha'or means what the oir is able to affect. Like if you bring light into the room, then you'll be able to see things. It's called oir lehoir. The fact that the oir can have an effect on something, this is called chitzonius ha'or. Etzem ha'or is what the oir is unto itself. The way the oil is unto itself, it cannot affect anything. Because it completely transforms, negates darkness, and therefore there is nothing. It's not oil. You see just the oil. You don't see anything. Chitzonius oil is that it can combine with the darkness and illuminate the darkness. That the effect of light is that you should be able to see other things. That's chitzonius. Etzem ha'or is not its effect, it's what it is in itself. Okay? This goes back to things that we discussed in the past also. Okay? This is the pshat that the kelim are malim on the etzem ha'or, and therefore they can bring an oil that can have an effect on the world. And again, malim etzem ha'or means that they conceal in the oil that aspect of oil that we say that this is etzem, this is not something that means created, this is reflected the moir, and it's megala chitzonius. What is chitzonius? That which needs to be brought into darkness, that which has a function. V'nimtzo muva. Therefore, it becomes understood now, the shnehem emes, that both points are true regarding the kelim. Because we said before that kelim are malim the oil, and we also said that kelim are megala the oil, and now we understand that both are true. Shehei malimim al etzem ha'or. That they conceal the oil means that they conceal the etzem ha'or. U'megalim es chitzonius ha'or. But they reveal the chitzonius of the oil. Again, chitzonius means the effect of the oil. Etzem means how the oil is unto itself. V'ho beho talio. These two things, the helm of the etzem oir and the gilui of chitzonius oir, are interdependent. Shalidei shemalimim al etzem al ho etzem. By the fact that the kelim are able to conceal the etzem, as a result of that, megalim as ha-chitzonius. This is how they can be megal the chitzonius. Because they malim the etzem, they can be megal the chitzonius. V'rayo al zem, and the proof for the fact, shehakelim eino megalim etzem ha'or, the proof that kelim are not megala do not reveal the etzem of the essence. That we can see, meyoisias hadibur. We can see this from the words, from speech. Speech, magalim as haseichel. The speech and the words and the oisias that are used in speech to express the seichel. She'eino magalim rak hitzonis haseichel. That they are only capable to be megala, to reveal the chitzonius of the seichel. V'loi pnimiyusei, but not the essence, the pnimius of the seichel. The pnimius of the seichel, the way it is sensed and understood in the koyach haseichel itself, cannot possibly be expressed in the oisias hadibur, in the oisias of speech. The Rebbe gives a concrete illustration of this. As we find by Sanhedrin, that they would discuss and debate their svaris, kol halaylo, the whole night. This is a din that has to do with din and nefoshes. Din and nefoshes, you know what din and nefoshes is? Din and nefoshes, the din is that the Sanhedrin should not paskin in the same day. They have to leave it over to paskin the next day. So if they had a debate of the Allah, and then they would interrupt and go home, and then convene again tomorrow, right? That would sound like how you lay it over a day. They say no, you have to lay it over a day. But what do you do at night? You continue to debate the whole night. Why? Because they will lose and forget their reasons. If this one thought that he is guilty, this one thought that he is not guilty, so they would lose track of their reasons why they thought that he's guilty and why they thought that he's not guilty. Must mean they will forget. They forget their reasons. They've expressed them. V'hagam, although shehoyu shnei soifri hadayon, that actually there were two scribes standing in front of the Dayonim. Shehoyu koisvim, that would write down divrei hamazakin, v'divrei hamachayvim. The Sefer Hadayonim stood there while the Sanhedrin was debating, and they were writing down the words of the Mezakim. One would write down the words of the Mezakim, one would write down the words of the Chayim. So it's all there on paper. And they can read them back and tell them what they said. So it's when they'll forget. And nevertheless we say they'll forget. Why? Pirush Rashi. For this Rashi explains, the Tavno de Liboyi Loikasvi Inshi. That the tavno, the sense and the container of the heart, that you cannot write down. You can write down that which comes to expression from the heart, but the sense of the heart, that the way the heart contains it, that you can write down. Hainu, which means to say, the amitis pnimis kavonosom, that the true deeper intent of their svaras, einam yechelim legalis beyesis. They cannot reveal in words. Ki im chitzonius levad, what they express in their debate is only the chitzonius, not the tavna deliba, not that which is sensed in the heart. And therefore, if they would interrupt, they would be reminded of the words, but not the tavna deliba, not the sense. Why not the sense? Because the essence cannot be put into words. Kalim take only the chitzonius, you cannot take the pnimis. Why can't it not take the pnimis? So going back to the same discussion.
It's not better. They cannot. It's not.
What is the essential difference between chitzonius and pnimius? That Kalim can take the chitzonius, he cannot take the pnimius. The difference is exactly as we said before in terms of light. There is a light that makes you see an object. That light you can express. What is light? Light that makes you see. Then there's the etzema light. Like we said, that it should be basically light. Not dark, but light. We can't explain what that means. We in our world cannot even conceive what it means that it should be light as a primary fundamental being, presence. Because world is without light and primary. You can't see things. You need light to make you see. Sight is something which is addition to the world. World, how do you get to know the world? By touch. Gashmis, you get to know by touch. Not by sight. Sight is something which comes from outside of the world.
About intellect. Also.
So the same thing is in intellect, and this is Tavna de Liebe. Tavna de Liebe, the intellect, that which one sees, there is the chitzonius and the pnimis. The chitzonius says guilty, not guilty. The pnimius says, not in terms of how it affects this person, how it affects this case. What is the essential truth? Not how it affects a practical thing. The essential truth cannot be expressed in words. Okay. You can take the chitzonius of it. The chitzonius is how it affects a certain case.
What do you mean? What Rabbi mean about the pnim, like the tan regish of the heart? Like he can sense inside that this person is guilty, but logically, let's say. He says he's not guilty, but logically, according to halacha, he sees like he's guilty. Okay, so, and since he's of a sense he's not guilty, so he's going to try to find the ways to prove that even finding after halacha.
No.
So what?
No. See, the first thing is, the first of Tavna de Liebe, it's not whether I want him to be guilty or not guilty. This is where the heart has to be completely subservient to the mind. It's not, oh, I like this guy, I have rachmanas on him, and I want him to not be guilty. That's not.
No, not rachman, but you sense something. You sense like you see he's not guilty, like not because rachmanas or something. Like, even the Rambam, I say, I read like this. judges, sometimes he's talking with the Eidim and everything, and according to Aloha, he should decide like
No,
this.
that's something else. That when he sees there is too much complexity and he sees something is not being presented correctly. He sees there's some deviance, some untruth. Called a dimuruma, it's called. A dimuruma. That's something else. Talking about dimuruma. Talking about there were witnesses, and the witnesses warned this man and said such and such, and you have to investigate exactly when did you say it and how did you say it, did he hear you, and all of these things, and you get a clear picture of what the situation was, and then you see from the perspective of Torah the halacha what situation makes him guilty, and you say no, the hasro wasn't a good enough hasro, let's say, and you have your arguments why. But these arguments do not capture the whole sense that the way you understand the union of Asra. Why does Asra have to be dafke this way and not this way? Because it depends on how you understand the principle of Asra. That principle he cannot express. They just argue, this is missing. Okay? But why is it necessary? That you can't express.
So this is the hergesh.
This is the tabno, this is what you sense what the principle of this halacha is. Or the principle of the situation. That you cannot express in words.
Are you talking about the story of Zusha? They answered a question halacha, and they went to the Rebbe Yehuda, and he said, "How did you know that?" And he answered, "I don't know why I knew that, but I just that's what." And he had a feeling from above seichel. And the Rebbe Yehuda wasn't happy. He said, we have to go by seichel. But he didn't understand it, but he had a sense of it.
Well, that's something else. We're talking about something which was understood in seichel. Tavno deliver means it was understood in his seichel. But that which was understood in his seichel was not completely, fully expressed in words. It was written down, what he said, and all his arguments. But when he himself reads back these words that he himself said, he has to first go and reconstruct and say, what did I mean when I said it? Because this was Tavna de Liva. This was something which he understood in his deepest cycle, which could not be expressed.
So two different people can say exactly the same words, but the inside, what the main bandeses can be a little bit different. Like one come from this angle.
That's right. And if Tavna de Liva, and if that cannot be written down, so then when they come back in the morning and the Sefer HaDayanim reread to them every word that they said, they will not have the same feel for this halacha as they had when they were debating.
What does this mean?
Tavna de Liva means the container. Tavna is like a container of that which, how the heart senses what's going on. Like Asvi that cannot be written down. What can be written down is how that affects the external, the verdict, guilty or not guilty. That can be written down, and the arguments, but not the sense behind it. Like I said, for example, he says, the line says, this is not a good enough hasra. Why? Because this and this was missing. What makes you say that this is something which is necessary in hasra? That depends on how you understand hasra. This cannot even be expressed. So if you remind him next day, you said this and this is not good enough hasra, he'll have to think, why did I say that? What's missing? And you sense it only when you were involved in the union. Because the pnimis of the seichel you cannot express. Like we spoke about this, the Etzem HaSeichel many times, on a much lower level, on the Seichel Anushi, that there are all kinds of reasons why people do certain things. Like our example classically is why people say you have to sit and eat with a spoon, not eat with your hands and not put your face into the plate. All kinds of reasons. You teach your children, eat with a spoon. So at first you tell them, eat with a spoon so that your clothes won't get dirty. And you tell them so that your face doesn't get dirty, your hands don't get dirty, so that the food doesn't fall all over the place. But eventually, the child grows up and recognizes that all of these things are the chitzonis. The real reason is because that's the human way to eat. It's a respectful way to eat. If you eat otherwise, you're just insulting the human stature. That you can't express. The sense of what a human being is and what is the proper behavior for a human being, not for any fallout, for any resultant effect, but just because it's properly human, it comes straight from the nefesh ha-sichlis, that you cannot express. But you have a sense. The same is true in terms of Seichel HaTorah and true Bichlal of Seichel. Seichel is a nefesh koyach. No matter how much you argue reasons, that's not capturing the Seichel. Seichel is captured is how the Seichel is sensed in the nefesh. That cannot be expressed in words.
Isn't there a person who said that how did he paskin? That he got a feeling that something was one way, and then he went to see if he could find that it's in fact true. And then he found, in other words, he sensed what was right, and then he proved it from Sfarim.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. The Rebbe explains in Samach Bov, there's a whole discussion about how a Rav paskins a shayla. That he learns all the halachas, and he knows everything that is written in Shulchan Aruch and in Gemara, and how a Rav all the knowledge that needs to accumulate in order to be able to pass on a shaila. And then after that, he has to bring it to his own seichel and make sense of it. And he comes to the conclusion, the Loshen from the Rebbe is that his ma'ames amitis ha-Torah. He says in his seichel, oh, Torah is right. It really makes sense. Then he really got it. But if he is going to look up and say, oh, it's like this, okay, Paskin, then he doesn't know the Shaila, he doesn't know the Psak Din, doesn't know anything. This is what it means. The Rabbi has to get inside of the Shaila, into the question, and get every little change in the Shaila is completely different situation. This is what the Rambam writes in Hakdama L'Mishnayos, I think, that the Mishnah is Ruach HaKodesh. Mishnah is not Seichel, human Seichel, it's Ruach HaKodesh. How do you see it? You see it in the fact that every slightest change in situation, in fact, changes the whole Allah. It's humanly impossible to get an insight of halacha of such a degree, to such a clarity, such a depth, that every situation changes the halacha. This is not a human seichel. Human seichel sets certain rules. And this falls into this falls into this falls into this. It's something that is completely flexible, so to speak. Not that the halacha is flexible, but the halacha applies perfectly. Just like, when they say an artist who renders a drawing and says a picture and says, Mamish, it's living. What's meant it's living? How does it come to life? He reflects every nuance. If the sun is shining from this angle, he senses exactly how this should be reflected and how this should be reflected. Then it comes to life. If he has a blotch of red and a blotch of black, it's a beautiful picture. But it's not living. It means it's not completely reflecting the way to reflect the time of day and the intensity of the light and everything else. There's a story that there was a very great artist created some kind of a natural scene. And people were standing around and admiring this piece of art. It was very broad. Now it's a lot of detail, with flowers and trees and the grass and birds, a whole living view of nature. They were admiring it. And then came back a farmer came by, looks at the picture and says, it's not true. What's not true? So he says, you see that bird standing on that blade of grass? If a bird stands on a blade of grass, the blade of grass has to be bent down. It cannot be straight like this. It ruins the whole picture. This can only be sensed by somebody who lives on the farm, is constantly impressed by it. Not he knows by heart what the grass looks like, what a bird looks like. So he had that sense. And also, obviously, he was a sensitive person. Das ist ein Tavna de Liebe, das wie ich. The Hainu, which means the Amitis, Pnimius Kavanosam, that the true Pnimius of their Kavanah, of their intent in their arguments, Einom Yechoilim Legales Beoisiyos, they cannot produce in letters, in words. Ki'im Chitzeni Yusei Levad, they can only express in words the Chitzonius of the Kavanah. And again, what does Chitzonius mean? Chitzonius is how it affects something else. That's what Chitzonius. How this affects something else. Pnimius is how it is unto itself. That you can't. And anything that we describe, we cannot describe a unit. We can describe a context. How is this relative to this? How are things relative to itself? We can describe. The same thing is illustrated. A musician. You play music?
I studied once when I was small.
But do you have a feel for music? A musician has to have a correct pitch. And the pitch allows him to distinguish between one note and another note. So if you play a whole chord, any person normally who has no normal hearing can identify, this is going up, this is going down. But they identify it in relation to the other notes, how it relates to others and relative. But a musician with a perfect pitch means that he can identify a single note. Hit any note on the keyboard, he'll say, oh, that's what it is. Because he has an internal feel for it.
We were just talking exactly about this last week.
That's nothing we can explain. Why do you say this is an A? This is something which he feels internally. So, this is something which is not relative to anything else. It doesn't affect anything else. And that's a pnimius that cannot be expressed. Chitzonius, how it affects other things, it can be expressed. Because that's the only thing you can actually talk about. What's bigger, this or this? How big is this? Tell me, how big is this? The Chachomim have defined absolute norms. Like they said, what is achila? What's called eating? Eating is called the kazayas. What's called drinking? A revis. So there, the it's defined, so to speak, in an absolute term. This is the base I believe. This is what a human being. This is what a human being means eating. Now, if one is very hungry, he'll eat tankazais. If one is satiated, he won't eat wankazais. But it doesn't change the halacha. Eating means if he eats a kazais. But that means that we are talking about the whole structure, the human structure and human experience and human sense of eating is defined over here.
So the person able to sense the essence of the things, but he cannot describe them.
Right. Like I said, this is a human thing. Like I said, this is the right human thing. Can you convince somebody that it is? Can you argue about it? This is the famous saying that you can't put up a head on somebody's head. You can explain to somebody, and if he listens with the human intellect, he will hear what you say. But if he does not have intellect, then you can't force him to see. 2 times 2, you can prove to somebody whether he has a head or not. Because that's not real seichel. That's not a neshama seichel. That's chitzonius seichel. You can force somebody to admit that 2 times 2 equals to 4. Whether he wants to or not, you can force it. But real seichel, you can't.
Because 2 plus 2 you can show him.
That's right. Anything that you show physically is not real seichel. Therefore, kelim are capable, the whole idea of kelim is that it conceals the etzem of the oir and it shows the oir in a certain form, in a limited form, in a chitzonius which allows the chitzonius. Pnimius oir cannot be put into a form. Okay, so let's finish the last 2 lines. So it's a similar thing with the Anasud, the Kelim Lamailo. She'ena megalim racha chitzonius, or pnimius ve'atzmius ha'oir misalim bohem. The pnimius and atzmius. You have to understand these words. Atzmius ha'oir means that it is oir because of itself, not because of circumstance. It is right not because the circumstance make it right. It's right in and of itself. That's called etzim. It's self-made. It's an inherent truth that you cannot explain. That cannot be put in the game. Chitzonius, how it affects other things, that you can put.